ευελιξία τώρα που κάνω τη λειτουργία. Ο Παναγιώτατος πάντα παίρνει κάποιες εντολές από το φανάρι ή από την Αρχιεπισκοπή. I'm going to explain you later in English.
Thank you.
Okay.
I can tell from the tone of your voice.
Απλώς θέλω να σας πω ότι για να μπορέσει και αυτή η αδελφότητα να προχωρήσει, όποιον οβολό έχετε, να ξέρετε ότι έχουμε μια γραμματέα από εκεί έξω, η οποία μπορεί να δεχθεί και κάποιες δωρεές προς την αδελφότητα Ιδραίων για να μπορέσουμε να ενισχύσουμε το έργο της. Αυτό λέει και ο παπάς στην εκκλησία, αυτό λέει και ο Xiradakis εδώ πέρα στο conference. I'm saying that in today's market everything is difficult, and we always ask our participants of these conferences to make some contribution to the fraternity, you see, in order to continue our work and to support Mr. Varouxakis what he is doing. So in any case, we are always thankful to the excellent sponsors. The tall guy here, Mr. Panos Moraitis, is the lead sponsor, and he's going to speak later to us for piracy. But before that, with the excuse of all of us, I will ask Mr. Laskaridis that he's going to run for fishing afterwards to say a few words about Greek shipping and towards Wall Street. But I have to tell you that it's a surprise that you will see people that they were born in the mountains and they are now in the Wall Street. But there are people that are coming from the middle of Balkans, as the Laskaridis families, ex-Laskaridis families, that's coming from a nice town of Messimvria. It was a family that was expelled from the Byzantines. Most probably they were good seafarers. And since then they grew up, and we have here Panos Laskaridis to say a few words for this conference. Thank you very much, Panos.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And dear friends, welcome, and it's a pleasure to speak to you again at this fourth conference, and it has become slowly a tradition for this gathering to ask me to say a few words. I suppose the reason is to respect an elderly person whose opinion people normally do not very much respect. So I'm trying to be quick and not tire you with speaking for far too long without actually saying much of substance. We were all impressed with the previous presentations of Martin and Nathanael. And before I forget, and I think you also would like to make a mental note, Martin, would you please be so kind as to send and circulate to everybody by email the very last page of your speech with the 7 points of the world champion in poker? Because I think that's probably the most important document that we've seen today. Ladies and gentlemen, many years ago, when I had a view on shipping, people would tell me, well, you know, Martin Stopford doesn't agree with this. And I would say, Martin who? So some years later, they would tell me, well, you know, you have this opinion, but Martin Stopford has a different opinion. Then I would say, Martin Stopford, but I don't agree with him. And then, still some years later, I came around to the conclusion and said, well, you know, it may not be too dumb if I go back and read what this guy said, on the off chance that I can learn something. And I can assure you I have discovered and learned many things of value to us ship owners. Well, as I said, I'm not an official speaker, so I would just like to say a very few words. I noted from Martin's presentation that the value of ships belonging to companies listed compared to the value of the Greek total shipping assets is what it is. We normally in Greece say that about 30% of Greek shipping is sort of controlled by listed companies. I'm not sure what we exactly mean by that. It certainly is a large percentage. It certainly is run and represented and directed by very prominent colleagues, and Jan is one of them, who is with us today. And while the debate about going public or not going public, of course, is a huge one and cannot even scratch upon here, I would like to just say why our group never managed to get public, but I don't think this is an example which applies to the shipping companies. We have never gotten actually even close to going public because simply people wouldn't have anything to do with us. And I think the reason was that our business was a mixed bag of business, having far too many things in the actual group that we manage. And I think it always lacked the necessary transparency which is necessary for the investors to see through what you're doing and what your plans are and what you're going to do. So we had a business which had to do with very specialized ships. That in itself perhaps not a fatal flaw, but alongside it there were other businesses, other types of specialized ships. There were businesses which were based ashore, like shipyards, for example. There was a great bit of shipping operations, chartering and operating ships of other people. There were some difficult businesses which people from the investment community were not able to see through, like transshipping cargoes at high seas and selling fuel at sea. And also perhaps, last but not least, mostly being involved with a business which is another one in bunkers, which is fishing, large fishing factory ships. And of course, anyone who has spoken to a banker knows that if he hears something about fishing, he just runs away. And my late father, who was in fishing all his life, used to say that where all the problems of shipping are solved and finished and closed, that's where fishing starts. So, however, fishing has one advantage. It still takes to a much higher level the idea of gambling which is inherent in shipping altogether. If shipping people must live with a bit of gambling, I can assure you that for fishermen, this is their everyday life. But, okay, our friends here are much more proficient to speak to you about the public markets and what the benefits and the disadvantages are. Other than our specific case, I think over the years people have thought here that, one problem is that you must obviously conform to a very rigid and disciplined corporate and accounting and audited structure. Some of us perhaps didn't feel very confident with this or very comfortable with this. The second thing is, what is the ship owner's circumstances? Now you may have 11 children, as I and my brother have, and then perhaps all these people might want to see the business in the next generation in a different way. That may also have something to do with it. And otherwise, it's also just a matter of philosophy, whether you really want to personally control your business, whether you are a hands-on ship owner or not. But I think there's no escaping the fact that the public markets have given a tremendous boost to Greek shipping businesses. And I think we must all recognize that. And if one tends to be convinced that this is a useful way to go, then I'm sure what we are going to hear, and we have heard already, and what we're going to hear here today, it is of immense value. So, as I say, I'm not anything but a very knowledgeable person in this. And I would like to just say a few more words of a more general nature, as I try to do every year about where Greek shipping seems to be today. There are good news and there are not so good news. On the domestic front, I think the chairman mentioned this before. We were sitting here and speaking last year, and we raised the question of the ministry, the dedicated Ministry of Shipping, as one of the main subjects. Well, we now have this ministry. It's being set up again. It needs still some bureaucratic and legislative work to be fully functioning. We do have a minister who is laborious and hard working, it would seem. We will have to wait and see the results of his endeavors, going along with the results of the rest of the government. years, and something which we unfortunately had not seen in previous ministers. Still on the domestic front, there's a wide range of subjects which are of interest and concern today. Maritime education is one, and we are doing a great effort in this direction to work closely with the government. Incidentally, I would like to make one comment. We saw the salute from the Minister of Education. I think I should point out that it's an absolute firm conviction and position of the ship-owning community, the shipping community, that maritime education should not be under the Ministry of Education. It should be squarely and firmly under the Ministry of Merchant Marine. Nevertheless, his wishes are, of course, welcome. So marine education is one important matter which becomes even more important not only for the ship-owning community, but because of the very miserable labor situation which exists in our country today is very important. There is a number of regulatory and tax issues which I don't want to dwell too much, but they are also a result of developments in our country, in our situation, in the intervention of our foreign partners and controllers, and this needs resolving and needs dealing with. And other than that, I think that the domestic scene, as far as shipping is concerned, is what it is. There are bigger challenges, of course, on the international scene. And I think we are talking there about four real issues. The freight market is what it is. I don't know to talk to you too much about. We all know that it is a poor situation. That's negative number one. The financing world is very difficult. Again, we all know that. And then there are two other developments which are not that bad. One, that the prices of ships have dropped very, very substantially. And the other thing is that we are we are coming, or we've come to a generation of new economic ships which can be had at very decent prices. And of course, there is a debate between these two pluses and these two minuses, and I think obviously the result of the debate is one which arises from the particular circumstances of each shipping company. And not only that, but I think that the circumstances of a shipping company today very much depends on what has happened to her at the previous cycle. By the way, we here in Greece hold an almost fatalistic belief that shipping works in cycles. So we know that for sure. We know that the cycles will come and go. We know that the good cycle is going to come again. The slight problem is that we don't know exactly when it will come and how long it will last. If we could also solve this last question, I think, we'd all be home and dry. Anyway, so, has a shipping company enjoyed the previous high freight market long enough to be able now to be liquid and strong and have reserves, or not? Has it been prudent enough not to order too many ships at too high prices, because that's going to be an absolute drag on its business today? So depending on this, you will obviously have to balance the arguments and judge what you want to do. It's a good chance to order new economic ships. The market seems to like them, although of course there's much more talk and promotion of these new designs now that the market is low, and the market is different. I think nobody would even care about that. But generally speaking, clearly the direction are new economic designs and new economic ships, also because of the general environmental debate. So, there's your situation. Depending on where you come from, and depending on where you are today, in terms of liquidity of the rest of the fleet and what your past has been, you can either be more conservative and try to ride out the storm, as I think in one of the slides from Martin, he said number one is to survive, or you may be able to try and take some advantage of the low prices and the new designs. So I think that is really a cardinal call to make today, and we see different companies making this judgment call in different ways. So, and I would like to finish, if you allow me just one moment more, on a more sentimental note, please. I see very many young people here today, and it's very gratifying and it's very satisfactory to see young people coming to hear old people speak about shipping. We would like you to hear the story of Greek shipping and come to know the story of Greek shipping and appreciate its value internationally and for Greece in the various beneficial ways that it goes along. But we certainly don't like you to follow our example. We are nothing more but a small part of the bigger part of our generation, which has brought our country into the mess it is today. We have destroyed this country, and therefore you have to take things over from now and do things entirely different. So listen to us, show some respect because we are older, speak nicely, but you have to know that we have to do things differently. Don't follow our example, because our example is which brought us here today in this mess. But it's still, as I say again, very gratifying to see all of the young people coming here to listen to a shipping conference, which is not the sight that you see every day. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to tire.
Thank you very much. Εγώ απλά σε μια σύντομη, σε ένα σύντομο ανάλυση και από τι είπε ο κ. Λασκαρίδης, θα σταθώ στα τελευταία κομμάτια. Θα πω ότι αφού μίλησε για την ναυτιλία και για ποιο λόγο ακολούθησε ή δεν ακολούθησε ο ίδιος να πάει την εταιρεία του στο χρηματιστήριο και μιλώντας και για την αγορά και τις δυσκολίες που υπάρχουν αυτή τη στιγμή, ένα σημαντικό πράγμα ήταν το πώς τελείωσε στην ομιλία του λέγοντας ότι καλώντας τους νέους να πάρουν τα ενία της χώρας, ναι μεν να παραδειγματιστούν από το τι έχει κάνει η γενιά του κ. Λασκαρίδη και των μεγαλύτερων, αλλά από εκεί και ύστερα να δεχτούν ότι αυτή η γενιά κατέστρεψε τη χώρα και την έφτασε εδώ που την έφτασε και να μπορέσουν οι ίδιοι, η νέα γενιά να τη βγάλει από την κρίση. Και βεβαίως φαντάζομαι ότι μετά τη μετάνοια της γενιάς Λασκαρίδη και όλων αυτών των κυρίων ανθρώπων, πιστεύω ότι θα είναι και αυτοί θα βοηθήσουν και θα επικουρήσουν πολύ τους νέους για να αλλάξουμε την πατρίδα μας από εδώ και πέρα. Just explain a few words in Greek about Mr. Laskaridi's highlights. Before I will go, I will ask people to raise some questions to the panel and of course to start the discussion. Θα ζητήσω τον κύριο Μανώλη Βορδόνη να μας καταθέσει, γιατί θέλω να πω σε όλους τους παρευρισκομένους ότι το τι έχει συμβεί εδώ στην Hydra σε ένα μεγάλο βαθμό, όπως έχω πει, οφείλεται στο Γιάννη του Σαχίνη, αλλά και μία άβρα που έχει βγάλει ένας άνθρωπος που μιλάει συνέχεια μέσα από το μυαλό του και μας έβαλε να πιστεύουμε ότι έχουμε δημιουργήσει ένα think tank εδώ πέρα μέσα, είναι ο κύριος Βορδόνης, ο οποίος είναι ένας εξαιρετικός ναυτιλιακός άνθρωπος, ο οποίος νομίζει ότι τερμάτισε την καριέρα του από το ship owning και από το ship management, αλλά δεν έχει φύγει ξεκολλήσει από το μέρος του μας και ούτε πρόκειται, γιατί μέχρι πάντα εδώ πέρα θα είναι. Είναι σαν τις φιγούρες που είναι μπροστά στα εσπλόρες από τα ξύλια με τα πλοία, που είναι και οι γοργόνες και όλα αυτά. Λοιπόν, έτσι θα τον έχουμε πάντα εδώ πέρα στο μυαλό μας. Και κύριε Σαχίνη, όταν μιλάει ο Τσέρμαν, κύριε Σαχίνη, δεν μπορείτε να με διακόψετε. Κύριε Σαχίνη, μιλάω και για εσάς, σας πάρω. Δεν έχει σημασία. Τον κύριο Λασκαρίδη του δώσαμε, όταν μιλάει ο Τσέρμαν, είναι ο πρίστη. Τελείωσε. Λοιπόν, και τώρα θα δώσουμε το λόγο στον κύριο στον Μανώλη, τον αγαπητό μου φίλο, να μας πει εν συντομία, γιατί με ενδιαφέρει εδώ πέρα να ακούσω ανθρώπους που ήρθαν από τα βουνά και πήγανε, ξέρεις τι θα πει να είσαι από τα βαρδούσια και να πας στα χρηματιστήρια, ξέρεις τι θα πει να είσαι δραμηνός, να έχεις δίπλα σου ξηρούς καρπούς και σταφύλια και να πας στη Νέα Υόρκη, ξέρεις τι θα πει να έχεις ανθρώπους εδώ πέρα με άλλα. Γι' αυτό θέλω γρήγορα να τα κάνεις. Βλέπεις και εγώ έχω κόψει τα πολλά για να πούμε μετά στο παρασύνθημα, γιατί μην ξεχνάς ότι υπάρχει και μετά, όπως λένε τα highlights της βραδιάς, υπάρχει και Μαυρακάκης. Πάμε.
Τι μπορεί να κάνει ο Μαυρακάκης?
Θα μιλήσει ο
Μαυρακάκης.
Θα μιλήσει ο Μαυρακάκης.
Λοιπόν, so after all this, me as a Vordonis, I'll try to respond. First, let me say how I feel. If you measure the energy density of this panel in brain power and mind power, it looks like a big rock, and you can imagine that I feel like a little humble Vordonis trying to express what they say. So I will try to express what I felt during the discussion. But before, let me say what brought me here very, very eagerly. One of the things that brought me here is what George said, that in this room, whenever we have come, the aura, the vibrations, the history of the environment has created beautiful discussions and interesting conclusions. That is one reason. The second reason is that, particularly after I left my core job after 40 years in a shipping company, and I always thought that I had a helicopter view of what was happening, I realized that 40 years now, I thought I was a general view, but I feel now that I had a restricted view, which was being restricted by the boundaries of the interests of the shipping company. I could not see and appreciate the charter, the banker, the producer of the commodity, the buyer of the commodity, or the people working in the countries. Now I think that I understand more, and I think that this wider understanding can be useful in the days we're going through, because in the days we're going through, which are days of difficulty, probably it's time to sit around tables together and find solutions which are not very conventional. So the question I would like to share with you is, are we happy not with our long past or the recent past? Are we happy with the situation we are in now? Are we in a situation, in a position that putting our brain to think, as Martin showed us on the Greeks, he presented the Greeks as a brain with flashes inside the brain and connection being inside the brain, and a brain that looks into the future. So, are we feeling that in this gloomy period and tunnel period, do we see a path towards a life and joy? And if we don't, do we have to rethink? I wanted to share with you this question. In this situation of tectonic changes and collapses that have led not only the shipping industry to be in distress, but the economies to be in distress, are we in need to rethink and refresh and restart, or we are happy with what we have been doing so far? You probably noticed that in the title of my words, I use the words rethink, refresh, and restart, and I did not use the standard terminology of erase and delete. I don't think that we have to erase and delete. We need our history. We need the lessons learned from the past. But the question is, are we all in a state that we need to reboot, reconstruct, see things with a fresh view, and go forward? So this is the question. I'm going to pick up points of Jelina's and Martin's, and probably in the discussion we can connect. What I picked up from Jelina, looking in the history of the past, was that those people that became the ship owners were also the traders, were also the merchants, and were also the bankers. So it is clear that in the past that the financial system, the banking system, was working to support the trade, was working to create a physical product and a physical service to the community. Is the situation the same now? It is an issue to discuss. Actually, Nathanael, it was interesting that he said about the big markets, the huge amounts of money being traded, the role of the merchant maker, of the market maker, and the role of the electronic system of the pilot, of the human pilot. To what extent is this huge, uncontrollable or little controllable system working to support the physical trade? Or if it is not, can we rethink about the system and go there to support the physical trade? So that's one question. The second question, coming again from Jelina's discussion, was you talked about the groups and the fraternities of the Hyotes and the Ergnousiotes and things like that, which brought to my mind the importance of synergies and clustering and people working together and building the trust to overcome the difficulties. Is it something that is happening now? Do we need it to be reinstated? I can say many other things, but I'll go to what Martin said. And I think that Martin gave an extremely optimistic view of the future. Although he's analyzing markets and he's been sitting with very pessimistic analysts and professors, he said two great things. One is that we have a brain that works and makes connections and can create, by taking the leadership, new opportunities and looking to the future. But he also said, or at least I perceived it, that the globalization too, which is getting out of the wealth world and can touch upon the billions of people who are in austerity, can create a tremendous new demand for trade and transportation, which may absorb the surpluses if we strategically define the objective of restoring the economies by bringing these communities, this huge amount of people and new children born who are in the starvation zone into a better welfare zone. Is this surplus of billions of people, is this the hope for regenerating the economy? I don't know if I'm going too far from what you said.
No, I think that's very fair.
But I think that you gave us a very interesting input of where to look towards.
Yeah, so I mean, the hard part is how you actually get to make that connection with the new world. And I have to say, over the years,
globe too.
well, it seems to me it's interesting. You know, if you do the big picture, you what you're constantly surprised at is how good ship owners are at finding what's actually going on out there, and because in the end it all devolves to detail. The devil's in the detail of globalization part 2, and I think that's one of. Oh, Yeah, sorry, I didn't. What has always surprised me is how good the shipping industry is at sort of picking up the detail of what's going on. I mean, in this next phase, the devil's in the detail, and what I can't see quite is how you do it. From where I sit, I know there's 6 billion people out there. I don't quite see where the maritime trade is, but I have a lot of faith that ship owners, one of the great skills of ship owners is minds that are able to glean that sort of lead and know where to go. As Onassis did. I think Juliana's example of Onassis, he sort of went right in very early and saw the significance of what was going on in the oil industry and built his empire out of that. And so, yes, I totally agree.
Yes, but, sorry, in a sense, therefore, in the new world of the globalization phase 2, it can be an opportunity for innovation.
Yes, of course, it's... But a lot of it is pretty dirty stuff, I mean, the world's not by the time when you're at this level, it's customers, you don't know if they're going to give you anything in the end.
I see.
And it's a difficult, I mean, it's a big and diffuse and complicated geopolitical world. And the best thing, I think, about it for shipping is that nobody else is better at doing it, if you see what I mean. You only have to be the best. You don't have to be good all the time. You just have to be better than anyone else. That's what Manolis A would say,
But you give me a nice pass, both of you, to bring to our company John Koustas and Michael Bodouroglou. What do you think, John, about what you hear here? I mean, on the challenges of the present, not of the future. Κάτσε και εσύ εδώ πέρα, Μανώλη. Or where we are.
Which means that I'm not allowed to say anything else.
No, you are allowed. You are allowed. Εσύ είσαι γοργόνα, είπαμε. Εσύ στην πλώρη. Συνεχίζεις και συνεχίζουμε. It's like the mermaid that we have on the ship in front. Usually we have always a mermaid or something for now.
Let me say something. Since we're using the gorgon, the mermaid at the front, which is by being at the front, is leading the ship. I mean, he's describing us as the leaders of the industry. He's describing us as the leaders of the economy. He's describing us as the leaders of cosmopolitan connections. He's describing us as the leaders of globalization too, as great Alexander was.
Exactly.
How they can survive the leaders with this recession?
We will speak about it. I want to have the idea of
connection with, of course, with the overtonnage, you said, to combine everything, and with if we come to equilibrium, for instance, how do you think that how we can avoid all this problem? How we can see both issues at the same time? And we would like to have an answer.
You are going to have an answer on this.
Yes,
I'm sure about this. I want the position of
I've got an answer for you later.
2 gentlemen next to me. I don't think that you need a lot of introduction, Mr. Koustas or Dr. Koustas or Michael Bodouroglou. Both of them are predominant figures of the modern Greek shipping and the world of shipping. Both companies are listed in New York Stock Exchange. Both men on my left, they are involved in the container dry cargo, and each one has another starting point, if I can say now, up to the time that they reach New York Stock Exchange. The one started from, the family started from a mountain here in Greece, which is in the central Greece. The family comes from Varouxakis. This is why I was calling that you will see the way to New York Stock Exchange. And the other man, Mr. Koustas' family, and the other man's family is coming from, in his background, he grew up in Drama, in the north part of Greece, south of Bulgaria. There, where Mr. Bodouroglou grew up, is next to the coldest area of Greece where the temperature goes even below 40 degrees in the winter. So it's very nice, and it has a very nice hotel over there to go with your wife and all your girlfriend to relax yourself and to depress yourself from New York Stock Exchange and all this networking. So, John, can you please tell us, I'm always respecting what the man-made is saying to me, Mr. Emmanuel, but I want your position on our discussion. The challenges of the present.
Thank you very much, George, for the introduction. We have seen by Martin Stopford's presentation that really shipping went to highs, troughs, and the cyclicality is an inherent part of it. And that's why what a friend of mine told me, the 4 more expensive words in the world are "this time is different." So, basically, a few years ago, I made a presentation at the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers about a model in control theory of how shipping works. And it was obvious, by this model, that shipping is inherently unstable. And the reason that shipping is inherently unstable is because you are trying, let's say, to stabilize a balance between demand and supply, because that's what in the end defines profitability in shipping. With, let's say, with new ships, that from the moment you take the decision until the ships reach the sea is an average of 2 years, which means that you're trying to stabilize something with, let's say, a control that only takes effect 2 years later. It's like, for example, if you have a shower and you have the 2 taps, the cold and the hot, and you open first the cold one, then you open the hot water. In the beginning it's okay. When it starts burning you, very, very quickly, you close, let's say, the hot water, and you open the cold one. So, because you have a very long lead in the shower, that takes time. So, in general, you are burned or freeze, okay, depending on how quickly you open or close the taps. And unfortunately, this opening and closing of the taps is something that cannot be really tuned when there are so many other parameters in world economy, and that's why shipping is inherently and will always be unstable. Of course, the mega trends that we have to identify in the world, like, for example, the emergence of China and India and Brazil, are, of course, very important parameters in development of trade. But there are significant other events that are really disturbing this balance considerably. I'll tell you something very simple. The United States used to be a considerable importer of natural gas. Within 3-4 years, the US not only became self-sufficient in gas by the shale gas exploitation, but also now they will start to become net exporters, and the overall energy balance in the United States, in terms of imports in the United States, is changing dramatically. And this will definitely have a significant effect, for example, in the flow of oil in and out of the United States and gas. I mean, all these parameters, although we would like to see the mega trends that, yes, definitely China and India will eventually, let's say, grow and will need to, let's say, achieve the tons per capita that Western economies are consuming. However, these trends are very good, but we don't really know exactly the rate of their increase. And it's the rate of increase that will really define, like I was telling you before, how quickly or slowly we're going to open the tap, which means whether really we will be able to get stability in shipping. Today, one thing that is for sure is that we live in a world that is changing rapidly. And this rapid change does not necessarily mean rapid increase in growth or rapid increase in transportation. Everybody, for example, thinks that, let's say, trade from China is going to be one way. On the other hand, there are some indications that, for example, some part of the Chinese production may shift back to the United States because of completely new technology of 3D printing. I mean, that's something that my son actually, which very much tech side, pointed me out a couple of months ago, and subsequently I've been reading various articles really, I mean, exploring these possibilities. So, it's, just to conclude, it's a very complex game. Transportation, of course, is going to increase. What we don't know is the rate it's going to increase. And all the people who were betting that China was going, I don't know, to consume all the iron ore in the world are the ones that are now chartering their Capesize at $3,000 a day. So, caution is the keyword, and as also the subject of conference has to do also with state capital markets and all that. It's important to have access to capital in order to be able to follow both the technological changes, but also to support your company during difficult times.
Dr. Kousak, my friend Yanis, thank you very much for what you said, which in a sense gave part of the answer to Adonis Varouxakis, but not exactly, part of it. And what I want to add, though, if I may, is that I like very much your example of the adjustment of the temperature of the water. But sometimes, in a house, when you are ready to have a shower, and you have in the same houses 3 different showers. If someone open the cold from the other side or the hot from the other side, this is what it used to happen to my old house.
Then you change your circulator.
Then I think if we add up these risks, I used to have this always in my old house in Philothei. Now we are adjusting it. But if this is making the matter more complicated, and this is why Varouxakis never get an answer. Let me see what. Let us see what. I mean, I'm very passionate to hear my friend Michael Bodouroglou that I served. I like him very much, and I served him this weekend as a sailor on his boat to just position himself on what we're discussing.
Well, I'll buy you a drink later on for your kind words.
Thank you very much. 2, please.
Actually, what Martin Stopford was describing before in his presentation, or a part regarding the future of shipping is concerned, reminded me of a question that was made to me during our IPO, during actually a lunch presentation to American investors. And the question that they asked was, how do you think shipping will be 100 years from now? That was the most definite answer. Anyway, my answer was that shipping is actually the second oldest profession. I didn't mention what the first one was. I presume they knew. But I was very pleased to hear Martin mention some numbers, especially regarding the consumption, the transportation per person that lives in the OECD economies, which is like 6 tons a year, compared to almost nothing for the other 6 million people that live on the planet.
Bigger.
Now, this to me is a very strong statement regarding the macroeconomics of the demand side of our business. And of course, we all have to be proactive, cautious. We have to close and open the taps as smartly as we can. But this is the good side. I think this is a very strong and positive message for shipping. And because there is so much demand, expectation for demand going forward, I think we have to be very careful to maintain freedom of trade, to maintain certainty that we will not lack as a shipping nation, we will not reduce or risk our competitiveness because of single country regulation. We've got to be able to maintain, we do not allow somehow the owners of the trade, the controllers of the trade, to actually control the country's transportation. So we've got to have to make sure that a big piece of the transportation pie remains open to free competition. I think this is the best guarantee for Greek shipping going forward.
Mr. Xiradakis, my question to
You can call me Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Pope.
The question to Mr. Martin was that some people are very optimistic, like Mr. Vordonis. Of course, Mr. Koustas was, I fully agree with him. His example was excellent. But my question is that some people are very optimistic. They say, now we are scrapping a lot of ships. Okay, we have over tonnage. And sometimes, we can reach the equilibrium and we can be optimistic. But, the over-tonnage is one issue. What Mr. Lascarini said is very serious. He said to the new generation to be very careful because we destroyed everything. And the people, excuse me, hold on.
That was only for Greece.
The people, they destroyed everything. They cannot find a solution. Therefore, it is very difficult, the situation, and we have to rethink and to start from the beginning. I say, when we have a deep recession like this, even if we reach an equilibrium, we have to be very cautious about shipping. Because if
Yes, but on the other side, sorry for interrupting you.
Excuse me,
Just to
if
give
I
you.
have closed my factory and I don't use crude, if I don't have money to pay, for my heat in my house, and if I don't have cash to open letter of credit, what customers can carry Bodouroglou with the containers? When they are building containers with the 22,000 TEU, this is my question to Mr. Martin, if he can answer.
He can answer.
If, of course, you understood what
I think I did. Let me try. I think, like all questions, it's a matter of asking it right. And I've got a few points I've been jotting down. I think the first one is that basically one of the main themes of what I was saying is that we've gone from a position where the charterers were very happy to sort of really treat ship owners as industrial carriers, and they took the risk on the ships really because they gave a long charter, and the owners traded ships for a small margin and took the residual value. That has gone now. I mean, basically in today's market, most of the independent tonnage, including with China, is moving on the spot market, and so that's put the ship owners in the hot seat. Ship owners are paid to take the risk, and the reason they're there is because the commodity companies can't know very well, they can't take these decisions themselves. I mean, look at Vale with their ore carriers, I mean, they've just... so what I'd say, the first thing I'd say is you're paid to take sensible risks, and if you don't take them, you're not doing your job and you're not going to last long, so you've got to take some risks. And the second thing is it's personal to your company and your company personally. Everybody's balance sheet is different, everybody's capacity for risk is different, and everybody's knowledge is different. So it's no good talking generally about what we all do. It's what you've got a great spectrum of people, some of whom can hardly pay their bank, and others who don't know which bank to trust to put all their billions of dollars in. So that's the first point, that you're not going to last long as a ship owner if you don't take risks. Second thing is businesses are built in recessions, not boom. I mean, of course, booms are a great chance to expand, but a lot of the consolidation work is done in recessions, and they have been going on a long time. I mean, the biggest one, I reckon, Jelena, was 17, after when the Americans kicked the Britons out of the United States. That was the biggest recession, and they've been going on since then, and some of them much worse than this. So, if you're going to go into shipping, you're going to spend about half your time in recessions, so you might as well treat it as normal, not exceptional. The third thing is that you need ships and cash. It's no good having cash and no ships, and it's no good having ships and no cash. You've got to have both, and so when you get into recessions, you do have to buy some ships, as you've suggested. And some of these are massively successful. I mean, I couldn't understand it. Do you remember 1999 when everybody started ordering Panamaxes? And I thought, Christ, what lunatics. And, Panamax, $18.5 million, $19 million. And then these ships get delivered in 2001 and the market's absolute rubbish. And you think, these guys don't know what they're doing. And those were probably the most profitable ships that anybody's ever ordered. And so, you take a risk, you don't always win, but sometimes you're in very big time. And so I think it's up to, a big thing, as you've said, is you've got to call your timing on when you decide to go into the new building market, and you won't always get it right, but you've just not got to get it too wrong.
Do you agree, Mr. Martin, that the circumstances now are completely different from the crisis, five crises we have passed?
Yes, you've got
because Mr. Varouxakis was sitting here in this room, he said this conference will be very useful for us to see how we can invest and what we are going to do in the future. Therefore, we have to be here very punctual if we get to help the audience. And I'm asking you the questions which the people want an answer.
Yeah, well, I would...
If, of course, we can be a magician.
Well, I think if you're a ship owner and you're not sort of looking very, very hard at the shipyards at the moment to see what's on offer, that you're probably not following things. This is a period of strain in the financial business, very low interest rates, so it is different from that
Yes,
point
of
of
course,
view.
because we are talking about liquidity which does not exist. We don't have money.
But you're looking for not the sucker exactly, but you're looking for someone at a disadvantage. Now, at the moment, the classic person you're looking for, of course, is the guy the bank's just foreclosed on. I mean, he's the guy who will sell you his. I mean, when I was in shipbuilding, we delivered a ship to Reardon Smith for $30 million, and 3 weeks later he sold it for $8. You know, and he didn't do that voluntarily. He did it because, you know, he had no choice. The bank told him to. And so what you're looking for is distress situations. So far, there's been, I'd say, a shortage of distress situations. The banks have been kicking the can down the road. They'd rather sit on the ships themselves than let them get into the market and create prices which will undermine their collateral value. So it's been, you're right, it's been an unusual recession from this point of view. And if you can't do anything, you can't do anything. You know, I mean, I would say the price. I'm sorry, just one last thing on this. My analysis of the price of ships, of new ships at the moment, is for Koreans they're about 10% below cost. That's my guess. I mean, I've got a little model I've had going for years. So they're not massive bargains. You know, if you're buying a VLCC at $90 million, it's not a cheap ship. It's sort of a bit under replacement cost, possibly, or maybe not even that now. So
But the catastrophe is with VLCC.
Yes, sorry.
Well, not necessarily. Anyway,
sorry. I mean, we are not going to go and analyze all the sectors here and, to see. However, I stuck in your main question being whether this crisis is different to the other shipping crisis or whatever. Certainly, as from the presentation and discussion we had so far, we have seen that we are moving in a revolution of the world of economy. We have passed from the first phase of globalization and we are entering the second phase of globalization. As Michalis said before, the tons per citizen of OECD has changed now, and the non-OECD people, they are taking their part, if you want, they are growing faster. The fundamentals for a crisis are always the same. The tabs that they are opening, allow me to say, in the house could be different. And here, just a second. I'm not going to speak about VLs or about containers. I'm going to speak about fundamentals. And I gave you some time now.
But
I gave you time.
That Mr. Xiradakis issue is that let's suppose accept hypothesis that we have some cash. And the question is, can they invest by putting the 30%, you know, in their ships, or they're going to go to the prison then? This is the fundamental issue.
This is why.
Of course, can be answered. It is not the usual crisis.
I want to find the fundamentals of restart, and I will ask Manolis, because this is the last word for the restart that you are saying. And with all your brain and your experience of this matter.
Optimistic is fantastic talking.
No. I want Manolis to have a view on the restart.
Mr. Chairman, can I just, talk as a historian, say that we are constantly scouting America, right? And Martin knows very well that shipping cycles have been going on, and every time they're different, we think. But different characteristics. But tell me, what's the difference of the shipping crisis of 1932, of 1975 to 76, of 1983? Why is it different?
Completely, because
yes,
there was a crack.
It is. There are differences, but
no, there is no difference.
But every time we think
we have the same fundamentals.
It's a complete collapse.
Adoni, it's not like this. At that time it was a collapse. I mean, what it was not a collapse of the economy. In the 80s was not a collapse of the economy with the interest rate being over 20%. There was not. At that time you had the liquidity, but you didn't have a project because there was not any project that could be justifiable to invest.
No,
What I'm saying, what professor is saying to you is simple. Crisis is crisis, or booming is booming.
No, historically.
Of course it is.
Now we are facing the crash of 30.
Okay, the crash of
30.
30. She said
What
that.
I said.
She said
How is it different now?
She said that.
But it's not the same with the crash we passed,
So-
the last 30 years.
If you come here to ask someone whether we're going to have a third world war after the crisis as it has happened in the 30s, I don't think that any one of us here, even Manolis and myself, that we are more thankful, etc., we can tell you whether we're going to have a war. But still, what we can tell you, and we can analyze you, the world restarts. Before I would go to Nathanael and go and ask some things about the stock market, which is our subject. Please.
If you accept the fact that we are in a big distress, we have been in a very stressful situation, and what we need to restore is confidence and trust. Because if you restore confidence and trust, then many things can start flowing again, money and businesses and things like that. I think we don't need to have perceptions of the economists and talk about cyclicity of the market and crisis of the 30s and crisis of the 20s. We need to go down to the physical situation and accept the fact that when we buy ships now, for every ship we buy, we're becoming poorer and poorer unless we combine the ship with a hedged operation and combining the cargo. We are in distress as shipping people, but also chartering people are in distress. Also, producers of commodities are in distress. Buyers of commodities are in distress. The whole world is in distress. So, looking back and learning, I think that the lesson Janina brought into the discussion is the Onassis one. Onassis was not a tycoon. He just went to Texaco and said, you need to transport your oil. I am a poor Greek from a poor country that needs to be innovative in order to survive. I will take the risk to transport your oil. Trust me. And they gave him the long-time charter. And this creative man went to the bank, and on the charter back he took the money. And the business was based and founded on fundamentals, on a physical transportation, on a physical product needed. What I'm trying to say is that if we go back to this fundamental approach, not learn from our guru here, who is teaching us to be good poker players. We cannot be poker players in times of society distress. We need to take decisions which are physically sound, which are supporting a need,
Such
as transportation for the societies.
there is no cargo to transport.
But there is no cargo. Go to the cargo owners and go to the traders and say, go to Noble, go to Trafigura, go to whatever, and say, I have ships and I'm poor. You have ships chartered and you are in difficulty because your owners are taking you to arbitration because you cannot pay the hire. And you are, valet, and you cannot support your mines because the Chinese are not paying the price for the iron ore. If you bring all these people together around the table and say, we want to continue the business, the prices at which we fixed the place 4 years ago are not sustainable anymore, but the business needs to continue. The communities, the Chinas, the Indians still need the cargoes. Can we sit together, reduce the risks, make synergic arrangements which will create confidence to us as investors, to bankers, as to the banks, as financiers, and create a business which is physically needed. If we work on the physical need, then we would have secured a portion of the business which will go back in the old timers of hedging the business by long-term charters.
So,
because I think that if we are dreaming to see the new supply and demand equilibrium without taking leadership, I think Martin implied that the equilibrium might come in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, might never come. We cannot expect a new equilibrium. We cannot be speculators in this market anymore. We can hedge our trade, one, and do physical businesses. And what I'm suggesting is, instead of hoping for the supply and demand without doing anything, let's be creative and let's take the leadership to increase the demand. If we are leaders to increase the demand and revitalize economies and bring peace on earth and bring more food to the starving populations, then we will have a demand which will occupy the overcapacity of ships available.
But you said everybody is in distress. How can we make it? How can we make it? Charters, cargo owners, banking people, everyone.
Get 3 words in order to pass over and think about it. I'm going to ask the position of other people. What it has been said so far here, during this period that we are undergoing, you need to take risks, you must make some innovation, and you have to smell the opportunities. If you are incapable to see them, stay home. If you are incapable, this is what I understand myself. If we are incapable,
analyze in practical terms.
In practical terms, I cannot be. Listen, Adoni, I wish I knew. If I knew, I know that I have to tell you that the grandchild of Martin Stopford and the grandchild of Zelila was going to say instead of Aristoteles Onassis about George Xiradakis coming from Volos. All right, I wish I knew, but I want to know. But I want to have a position now here about, because we have another 10-15 minutes to close this session.
Can I just say something?
No, you don't have any other words. Thank you very much. You have.
It's Zelina's work.
Zelina's work, what?
Zelina said that Onassis entered the markets in 1932.
You know what was happening?
And he was creative enough to find solutions that overcame the problems of the markets. He sensed the market and found a solution, and he became rich.
So I want the position of the 2 ship owners, prominent ship owners that we have here, because Ion is tired. You don't want to speak. This is what I have heard. No, if you want to speak later, you can speak. But you were tired. This is what I was told, and I didn't like it at all. What is? Listen, once you go black, you never go back. Once you are a president, you never forget about it. And you know that I am a cabinet president. So I want, because afterwards you are going to speak. Because here I have Nathanael.
Just to answer to the question that was posed, in fact, the crises are very similar. The crisis we had in the 80s and today are just the 2 sides of the same coin. Lack of liquidity in the 80s because of very high interest rates. Today, because of inflationary pressures. And in fact, the 30s is a similar crisis. So in fact, the drivers of the shipping crisis is world trade, is financial situation of the world. And if you look at smaller crises during these periods, like the Asian financial crisis in 1999, also created in shipping, a depression for a couple of years. So I think it's the one side that really matters in shipping. there's always an increase in supply of vessels over time, but what creates fluctuations in the demand side, which is driven by trade, which is driven by finance. So to look at what's going to happen to shipping, you should look at what central banks are doing, and that's been true throughout since the beginning of the capitalist system. In the 30s, the wrong decisions were taken by the central bank, by the Fed. Interest rates were increased. Today, the right decisions are taken. Interest rates have been kept low, and quantitative easing is kicking in. So hopefully, this is different than the previous crisis in the sense that we have the previous experience, and we shall not go to a third war, hopefully. This is what I wanted to say.
I fully agree.
Όχι discussion. He positioned himself towards your question.
So just to say that I want to...
Bravo. Thank you very much. And I'm very glad that the lady... Κάτσε εκεί πέρα, κοπέλα μου. Μην βιάζεσαι να το κλείσεις. Εγώ είμαι κουμάντο εδώ πέρα. Άμα έχεις chairman έχεις. Άμα δεν έχεις, πάρε άλλο chairman και κάνεις κλείσω όποτε θα έχεις. Λοιπόν, the issue here is the third one, because I want, since we have Nathanael here, and you know Nathanael is working hard and in order to serve many Greek ship owners, including yourself being a listed company, I want the position of... No problem. Yes, no problem. Well, more or less it's the same thing. More or less the same thing. And sometimes it's good to transfer. You see, if you were here, you will see a lot of companies that were transferred from Nasdaq to this, just to make marketing for you. Okay, no commission, because we are above money. She's the captain. All right. So, Michali, I want you to comment on the word opportunities in today's market or in what you are seeing in front of you. And then, George. Do you think that as we are in a crisis, opportunities, whether opportunities exist or whether they will come soon?
I think in life and in business there are always opportunities. And in fact, many people take the view that the best investments are those that are made during the downturn. History has shown, especially in shipping, that most people who make a lot of money in shipping, they make the money when they invested counter-cyclically, when everybody else was not investing, was afraid to invest. And, they got it right and they ended up rich. So there are always, the answer is that there are always opportunities. The difficulty is twofold actually. A, isolate, find, target the opportunity, and the other great issue that most people in the business are facing today is the lack of liquidity. The fact that the crisis has been running for so long, it's been draining businesses out of cash, out of the blood, and therefore the opportunities are there only for those who are liquid, who reserve cash at the end over a long period. So, opportunities vary for persons, vary for companies, according to, depending on what the financial situation is.
John, don't you think that in your market, thank you very much, Michael, don't you think that in your market, being full specialized container only, you have the huge Danaos company, one of the world's largest companies, you are heavily specialized and concentrate in one market, as opposed to Michael, for instance, that he's in the dry as well, in the public market. Do you think that it's more difficult for you to identify opportunities rather than to follow the relationship with the liners, etc.? Can you be innovative yourself?
Well, you can always contribute towards, let's say, more efficient operation, but in general, and in terms of, let's say, the design of the ships, this is what we call innovation. Of course, shipyards take the lead role with a bit of input from the large operators. And as far as we are concerned, we try to concentrate our, let's say, research into purely operational way. And that's why we managed to have considerably lower operating costs than these companies, and that is why they are, let's say, outsourcing practically the ships by long-term charters to us. Actually, I wanted to make a comment on what Manolis was saying before. I think that Danaos, more than anybody else, has used the long-term charter model. I mean, we have all the ships, we have order were together with 12-year charters, so we do not really take residual risks. This, of course, it's a model that is definitely resilient. However, the risk-rewards sometimes might be questionable. And when we go into, let's say, markets like dry bulk, for example, quite a few people try to do the same thing, but with counterparties, like, for example, Korea Line or Sanko, who left them completely dry. So in the end, it's very, very important when we are talking about long-term charters to be able to understand to which extent you are actually hedging, or you are writing a free option to someone who's going to dump you with very little penalty the moment that things turn sour. So the solution to that is to be able really to vertically integrate the business. And that is why, although everyone may say about, let's say, the liner companies that they are not making money, so, but today we see that the world's largest companies are actually the liner companies. And why they are achieving that is mainly because they are integrating their business. They are using, let's say, part of their asset requirements through, companies like Danaos to enhance, let's say, their returns. So we are trying in many cases, let's say, to outsmart these guys. Yeah, in order to give them, let's say, long-term ships on charter when the market is high, so that we can really enhance the returns on assets that we may have acquired cheaply. That's not always easy. And in the end, because here we are talking about the shipping industry, here we have to understand that whether, for example, if we have, say, Danaos making money and Maersk losing money because, let's say, they have an expensive charter and Danaos got a good deal, that's irrelevant as far as the industry is concerned. What we need is to consider the whole let's say, world of shipping, which includes the operators inside, and try to maximize what the community is paying for our services. This is really the key. And to be able to do that, unfortunately, you have to be able to be vertically integrated and control the direct access to the world, and to be able to, in this respect, to hedge through direct contact to the world and not just on a business-to-business basis.
Thank you very much. Now, Nathanael, I want you to speak, but I want you to speak, just to position on another issue that is always, next to the opportunities that you have heard, next to the effort of the ship owners that they are making in order to provide the incremental value you want in the transportation chain and to smell the opportunities, etc. in your superb, as you presented to us, superb stock exchange, the world's largest stock exchange, etc., at the beginning when the Greek companies entered the last decade, I mean starting in 2003, whenever it was, we were all of us, we were very, not curious, but we were feeling a bit unsafe on the analysis of the investment bankers that was made in shipping and on the way that the information about shipping and analysis of the pros and cons of at any stage of the market was spreading out into potential investors. Do you think that now for instance, are we confident that the analyst of the investment banks can analyze properly the pros and cons of the down cycle of the current market? And do you think that yourself as New York Stock Exchange can do something more in order to attract and improve the interest of investors for shipping business? Because don't forget that in today's market, the equity side is going very well, the finance side is not going very well. And your point, your input is very crucial. Thank you.
I will definitely answer that question. First, I'm not a banker, so I'm not here to comment on the work of their teams about the valuation and the analyst. But what is clear, and I very like the way things have been evolving, even if it was a debate at some point. I think good things always emerge from a debate. One thing that is interesting is that if you think about history and make the link with the present, you see that there are ups and downs. There are crises. You're not going to avoid that. So, okay, we shouldn't worry too much about the crisis. I mean, who cares? More important things in the world are your family, the health, your children, and you fight another battle. No worries about that. Good days after bad days, the sunshine after the rain. I mean, you can complain about the rain, but you should really focus on what you're going to do when the sunshine comes by. My point is that if you look at how Euro people have been innovative enough to create new source of financing, and you see that those three gentlemen here have been risk takers and they've decided to go public. What does it mean? It means that you agree to get out of your comfort zone. It's very comfortable, I have to say, to visit your banker, your commercial banker, and negotiate the terms. It's something else to go to Wall Street, sit around a table, and face questions that can be very stupid, as the one asked to Michael about why do you think the shipping industry will be in 100 years? I mean, you care, so you won't be there, so why are you interested in that? But still, it's thought-provoking. You have to think about the answer. And the good thing about the stock market is that it's going to challenge you. Sometimes it's a bit too much of a challenge, because you don't really see what's going to happen next Monday, and they expect an answer for your business, what's going to happen next Monday. But the interesting thing is that you're getting out of your comfort zone, and you need to provide answers. Think through about what's going on. Take a little bit of a helicopter view. And I think one of the solutions for that industry specifically is to be more open to the stock market. I'm very surprised that right now, you've seen the numbers, 34 companies are listed, shipping companies are listed on the NYSE. We're talking about global companies, so Greek, other Americans and Latin Americans. 34. And only half of them came to the markets in 2007. So basically half of the listed population came to the market in the last 5 years. So if you want to be able to access capital and survive, you need to think about other ways of accessing capital. And the stock market is a nice way to do that. If you're ready to take on risk, be innovative enough to think about your strategy and the way you want to position your business to investors. Maybe you need to do a little bit of educational work, to your point, about the analysts, the valuation, the bankers. I mean, it's your business. You know more than they do. But at the end of the day, my take is that it's very recent to go to the public markets. And if you look at another industry, the biotech industry, the biotech industry is those little research firms, PhDs, that are trying to come up with the next medicines. And right now, the medicines you're using today, most of those new medicines were invented by small firms called biotechs. And they don't have any capital. They just have ideas. And it's capital intensive as an industry. How do? They go to capital funding, VCs, hedge funds, and stock markets. Stock markets is a way to bypass your banker. You will always need a banker. But if you're ready to do that, the future, my prediction is that in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, those people who survive will be the ones that will be ready to face the stock markets, face the investors, and as long as they retain control on their business, there is no risk, no downside for them.
Πήρες ωραία απάντηση. Σήμερα τώρα πήρες ωραία απάντηση. Nathanael, thank you very much. I think that the time has come for Mrs. Travlou and Despina. I will call her here to say a few words about the next session, but before that, I want all of you to congratulate her because of the nice organization that she's tell you that she's working very, very hard and just as a friend of the fraternity of Athenian Hydrians.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we all move to the second floor to enjoy a delicious green